President making a statement on the proposed state visit by Donald Trump.
What the President did was
in US immigration policy. In view of the understandable concern and uncertainty, it may be helpful if I describe for the House the consequences for British citizens and dual nationals of the executive order issued last Friday. Let me begin by saying that this is not a UK policy, and it is not our policy, nor is it a measure that this government would consider. I've already made clear our anxiety about measures that discriminate on grounds of nationality in ways that are divisive and wrong. On the 27th of January, President Trump issued an executive order banning the citizens of 7 countries from entering the US for a period of 90 days. Those countries are Syria, Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Yemen, Libya, and Sudan. The order makes clear that no US visas will be issued to citizens of those states, and anyone who already has a visa will be denied entry. The immigration policy of the United States is, of course, a matter for the government of the United States, but on the face of it, this executive order has consequences for some British citizens. For that reason, I spoke yesterday to the US administration, and my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has today spoken to General Kelly, the Secretary of Homeland Security. I'm able to provide the following clarification. The general principle is that all British passport holders remain welcome to travel to the US. We have received assurances from the US Embassy that this executive order will make no difference to any British passport holder, irrespective of their country of birth or whether they hold another passport. In any case, the executive order is a temporary measure intended to last for 90 days until the US system has added new security precautions. This is, of course, a highly controversial policy which has caused unease, and I repeat that this is not an approach that this government would take. But let me conclude by reminding the House of the vital importance of this country's alliance with the United States in defence, intelligence, which I'm sure they appreciate and understand on that side. On defence, intelligence and security, we work together more closely than any other 2 countries in the world. That relationship is overwhelmingly to our benefit. The Prime Minister's highly successful visit to the White House last week underlined the strength of that transatlantic alliance. Where we have differences with the United States, we will not quail from expressing them, as I have done today.
Order. Let me just say to the House that it is obvious that there is huge interest in this matter, which colleagues can rely upon me to accommodate. I understand the strength of feeling, but the Foreign Secretary's statement, and indeed upcoming his answers to questions, must be heard. The Foreign Secretary.
Where we have differences with the US, we will not hesitate to express them, as I have done today. If they were listening, if the members opposite were listening, as the Prime Minister did yesterday, as she did indeed in her excellent speech in Philadelphia last week. But we also repeat our resolve to work alongside the Trump administration in the mutual interest of both our countries. And I commend this statement to the House.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying this. I'm sure that the whole House will want to join me in expressing our sorrow at last night's gun attack on a Canadian mosque, which left 6 dead and 8 injured. They were all victims of hate, and we are all under a duty to stand up to hate, whenever and in whatever form it appears. I thank the Foreign Secretary for advance sight of his statement. I have to say, I thought there were a few pages missing, but apparently not. And so I hope that, Mr. Speaker, you will allow me to ask some questions on details that were missing from this statement and also to ask about its timing. First, on the detail. As the Secretary of State knows, there are thousands of people in Britain who live here on a permanent basis, but who are also nationals of the 7 listed countries, and they have no dual citizenship. Many of them are here with indefinite leave to remain, having fled persecution or war. Can the Secretary of State confirm, based on what he has said today, that these thousands of British residents are now barred from travelling to the United States? People like Dr. Hamaseh Taheri, an Iranian national living and working in Glasgow, who on Friday was told that she wasn't allowed to fly home from Costa Rica because she was going to need to change planes in New York. Similarly, if a Somali national with a temporary US visa is currently in the UK visiting their family, can he confirm that they cannot now return to the US under these rules? I hope he can clarify these points. Turning now to the timing of this announcement, this order was issued at 9:45 on Friday UK time. It then took number 10 until midnight on Saturday, a full 27 hours later, to say that they would consider the impact on UK nationals. It then took the Prime Minister until Sunday morning to tell the Foreign Secretary to telephone the White House, and it took him until midday on Sunday to call the travel ban divisive and wrong. That is 38 hours. 38 hours, Mr. Speaker, to have the courage to say what everyone else was saying on Friday night. And finally, 46 hours after the executive order, we got clarification that UK nationals and dual nationals would not be affected. If this was because the wheels in Washington were slow to turn, it might be understandable. But look at Canada. They were immediately in touch on Saturday with their American counterparts, and by that evening they had secured the travel rights of Canadian nationals a full 17 hours before we had secured ours. So can I ask the Secretary of State, Canada is supposed to be 5 hours behind the UK, so why were they a day ahead of us when it came to resolving this issue? And finally, a point on timing. The order was signed barely an hour or two after the Prime Minister had left the White House. Can he tell us, in their discussions about terrorism and security, was this imminent order mentioned? Because I don't know, Mr. Speaker, what's worse, that the President would have such little respect for the Prime Minister that he wouldn't think of telling her, or that he did, and that she didn't think it sounded wrong. If it was the first, it would hardly be a surprise. But if it was the latter, then we really do have a problem, Mr. Speaker. Because when it comes to human rights, when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to torture and the treatment of minorities, President Trump is already descending down a very dangerous slope. And when that happens, we need a Prime Minister who is prepared to tell him to stop, not one who simply proffers her hand and silently helps him along.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I listened very carefully to I think the most substantial point the Right Honourable Lady had to make was about a particular case of a Glaswegian doctor, and I appreciate that there will be all sorts of cases, particularly difficult cases, heartbreaking cases, people who experience a lot of frustration as a result of this measure, which I repeat because I perhaps members didn't follow it first time. This is not the policy of Her Majesty's government. This is a policy that is being promoted elsewhere. What we will do is make sure that we, all our consular network, all our diplomatic network, is put at the service of people who are finding difficulties as a result of these measures. But as I say, because of the energetic action of this government, we now have, by the Prime Minister, by my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, we have an exemption for UK passport holders, whether dual nationals or otherwise. And I think most fair-minded people would say that actually showed the advantages of working closely with the Trump administration, the advantages of having a relationship that enables us to get our point across, and to get the vital protections for UK passport holders that they need. And I may say that the approach taken by the party opposite, pointlessly to demonise the Trump administration, would have achieved the very opposite.
Mr. Crispin Blunt.
Mr. Speaker, does the Foreign Secretary Does the Foreign Secretary welcome the joint statement by Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham, expressing their fear that this executive order will be a self-inflicted wound in the fight against terrorism?
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. I think possibly what the interventions of Senator McCain and Senator Graham show is that this is a subject for lively debate on Capitol Hill, as it is here in this House. And I repeat that this is something that we do not support. It's not a policy that we agree with, and it's clear from what my right honourable friend says that there are others in the US who don't agree either.
Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Foreign Secretary for advance sight of his statement. Without a thought to the context, on Holocaust Memorial Day, President Trump issued an executive order to ban those born in 7 predominantly Muslim countries from entering the USA, including, and I quote, those bad dudes who are actually the real victims of violence who are fleeing the conflict in Syria. This action is inhumane, it's racist, and it's immoral. And I welcome the fact, Mr. Speaker, that this House is now treating the threat posed by President Trump with the seriousness that it deserves. We also, on these benches, would like to pay tribute and support the strong statements that have been made on this issue by Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, and welcome the work that's already been done by so many. You can learn some lessons from Scotland's First Minister. And pay tribute to the work being done by so many on the ground in Scotland, particularly Women for Independence, Mr. Speaker, who provided moral and practical support to those who have been unjustly affected by this despicable action. But can I ask the Foreign Secretary, given the Prime Minister's blossoming and frank relationship with President Trump, did she know in advance that the President was to issue this order, which has concerned so many of our citizens? And does he agree with senior national security experts in the US and elsewhere that this will have national security implications for the UK, given that the US administration has now adopted Daesh's false narrative that theirs is a conflict between the West and Islam? If we want to be a global leader, this government needs to show global leadership. Where is it? The Prime Minister has been tested, and she has failed on this, her first challenge.
Well, as the Honourable Lady will know, when it comes to tackling the scourge of Daesh, and she's absolutely right, this country is the second biggest contributor to military action in strikes against Daesh in Iraq and in Syria, and we continue to be the second biggest donor to the humanitarian crisis in that region. And everybody in this House should be incredibly proud of the leadership that the UK is showing in that respect. Mr. Speaker, I have already made my views about this. I don't see. It is up to members of the House of Commons, if they wish to exhaust the wells of outrage in the denunciation of this policy. I've made my position clear. I made it clear yesterday. I said it was right. I said it was wrong to promulgate policies that stigmatise people on the basis of their nationality, and I believe that very profoundly. What we have done in the last few days, is to intercede on behalf of UK nationals, which is our job, and UK passport holders, and we have secured very important protections for them.
Dr. Julian Lewis.
Trump is what we might call a known unknown. We know that he will do and say unpredictable things and often just as quickly abandon those positions. He will learn as he goes along. And what we have to remember is that our security and that of Europe depends on the Atlantic Alliance. So does my right honourable friend agree with me that there must be no question of our refusing to welcome him to these shores in the hope of setting him along the right path as soon as possible to our mutual benefit?
Well, my right honourable friend is entirely right in the sense that the Prime Minister succeeded the other day in getting her message across about the North Atlantic Alliance, about NATO, and President Trump affirmed very strongly his commitment to that alliance. It's vital for our security, particularly the Article 5 guarantee. And the new President is, I think, very much in the right place on that. And it is totally right, that, and he said so, it is totally right, of course, that the incoming president of our closest and most important ally should be accorded the honour of a state visit. That's supported by this government, and the invitation has been extended by Her Majesty the Queen quite properly.
Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is not just about the impact on British citizens. Yes. One of our closest allies has chosen to ban refugees and target Muslims. And all he can say is that, well, it wouldn't be our policy. That is not good enough. Has he urged the US administration to lift this order, to help refugees, and to stop targeting Muslims? This order was signed on Holocaust Memorial Day. Which makes it for the sake of history, for heaven's sake, have the guts to speak out.
As I say, it is open to MPs opposite on all sides of the House to come forward with yet fresh expressions of outrage about the presidential executive order. I have made my views, and they're entitled. I have made my, and I share the widespread disquiet, and I have made my views absolutely clear. I've said that it's divisive, I've said that it's wrong, and I've said that it stigmatizes people on grounds of their nationality. But what I will not do, which is what I think the party opposite would do, is disengage from conversations with our American friends and partners in such a way as to do material damage to the interests of UK citizens. What we have secured are important protections for people in this country, and that is the job of this government.
Sir Simon Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given our newfound closeness with the Trump administration, what plans does my right honourable friend have to try and persuade the administration after the 90 days to abandon what to many is a despicable and immoral policy? And would my right honourable friend agree in paraphrasing a far wiser president, John F. Kennedy, that those that ride on the back of a tiger end up inside it?
Well said, Burns.
And I'm sure that the words of the right honourable gentleman will be heard in Washington. But all I can say is that we will continue, Mr. Speaker, to engage with the administration to make our points about the interests of UK nationals, and of course, wait for it, and of course, to convey our feelings about the global consternation that this measure has caused.
Mr. Hilary Benn.
Mr. Speaker, could the Foreign Secretary clarify what would be the position for an Iraqi national resident in the United Kingdom whose child is working in the United States and is a dual British and Iraqi citizen in the event that that child died? Would her mother be able to travel from London to the United States to bury her daughter under the current US arrangements? And if not, would he agree with me that that would be quite simply inhuman and outrageous?
Yes, of course it is possible to create all sorts of hypothetical situations which are yet more outrageous. But the answer, as far as I understand, Madam, you will appreciate that it is up for the US to explain this aspect of their policy. The answer is that such a case would be treated very expeditiously, and particular arrangements would be put in place to ensure that that person was able to travel to the US.
Order, I will do my best to accommodate the extensive interest in this subject, but can I gently and perhaps tactfully point out that members who toddled into the chamber after the Foreign Secretary's statement had begun should not be standing. It is in defiance of the conventions of the place, and I'm sure they wouldn't be so unreasonable as to think that they would have a right to be called, because that would be perverse, and they wouldn't behave in a perverse way, I feel sure. Sir William Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that the United States Congress and the courts as well as the President and diplomacy, will play a part in arriving at a solution over this question. Does my right honourable friend accept there is a universal threat from jihadists, and that Europol itself, as an example, have estimated there are up to 5,000 jihadists who've come over from several of these countries, and that furthermore we should also remember the victims of 9/11 in New York, 7/7 in London, Paris, Brussels and Berlin, not to mention Lee Rigby.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, we understand the threat from jihadists both at home and abroad, and that's why it's ever more vital that we work with our American friends to combat that threat.
Mr. Dennis Skinner.
Will the Foreign Secretary, just for a moment, try to recall, along with me, as I hid underneath the stairs when two fascist dictators, Mussolini and Hitler, were raining bombs on towns and cities in Britain. Now this government's hand in hand with another fascist, Trump. And what I say to him, do the decent thing and ban the visit. This man is not fit to walk in the footsteps of Nelson Mandela.
Well, I hesitate to say it, but the honourable gentleman's memory must be at fault if he thinks Mussolini rained bombs on this country. But I hear the comparison that he makes. I don't accept that comparison. I believe it's our interest to work with our American friends and partners to show our disquiet where that is appropriate and to get the best deal for UK nationals and dual nationals.
John Redwood.
When President Obama imposed a similar ban on a single country in 2011, American democracy ensured it did not last and other action was taken. Can't we rely on American democracy this time to do the right thing and take the right moral pose? And isn't it British ministers' jobs to speak for British policy?
My right honourable friend is entirely right, and indeed the member for Reigate has already pointed out that there is disquiet about this policy already on Capitol Hill, and I have no doubt whatsoever that the American political system will help to introduce the requisite balances in the end. It's our job to intervene now and get the best deal we can for UK nationals.
Mr. David Lammy.
In November 1938, a then Conservative government prepared a bill that led to the Kinder transport that transported Jewish refugee children to this country. Doesn't the Secretary of State realise that in making his statement he should uphold the Geneva Convention and speak truth to power in the United States? He's let the House down and his job down.
I have to say that I think the honourable member is taking sanctimony to new heights, and in fact most fair-minded people would say that we have been very clear with our friends in America that we don't agree with their policy, we disapprove of discrimination on grounds of nationality, and but we've worked with them to get the best possible outcome for UK nationals and dual nationals. But we have also made clear to the American administration, as I'm sure he would approve of, the widespread consternation that is felt by individuals such as him around the world.
Anna Soubry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I congratulate the Foreign Secretary in condemning America's policy, which on any standards is completely unjustified. I am also, like many of us, delighted that Sir Mo Farah is apparently now going to be able to go home and see his wife and his children. Would the Foreign Secretary agree with the words of Sir Mo Farah when he described this policy as being based on nothing more than prejudice and ignorance?
I savour the rare congratulations from my honourable friend on any matter whatever, but I'm delighted, of course, particularly delighted that Sir Mo Farah is able to continue to go back to the United States, where, of course, he trains and is able to get fit to win the many medals that he does.
Angela Regal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Foreign Secretary knows that this policy is counterproductive, immoral and wrong. His attitude and his approach has been to get an exemption for UK citizens from it and invite the perpetrator of it to a full state visit. This doesn't seem like the wholehearted condemnation that this House would deserve. And what is he going to do to make it absolutely clear, in no uncertain terms, to this American administration that this kind of discrimination is counterproductive, wrong and immoral?
Well, to the right honourable lady, she's just said that the policy is counterproductive, immoral and wrong. I've said that it's divisive, discriminatory and wrong. If anybody thinks there's a substantial difference between our two positions, then I invite them to write to me and explain.
And the Deans are our way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I commend the Foreign Secretary on the work he did through Sunday into the night to ensure that Britons have safe travel to the United States of America. Can I further ask him whether he's had clarification from the administration that they have now updated the advice to their embassies, because there's some confusion that some embassies are still turning dual nationals away and not allowing them to enter the United States of America.
And I'm thrilled that neither my honourable friend, with whom I've travelled many times, nor Sir Mo Farah will be affected by this presidential executive order. And I can confirm that the embassy advice has been updated, Mr. Speaker, as we've been speaking.
Hal Williams.
Speaker, most of us condemn xenophobia without hesitation, and we reject racism almost by instinct. Which of the Prime Minister's great British values informed the first initial response to Mr. Trump's order?
The Prime Minister's primary duty, as the honourable gentleman will know, is to the safety and security of everybody in this country, to protect their rights and freedoms. And that is what has been achieved by the agreement that we have struck. And he will also know that she was first out of the box, very early out of the box, in saying that she disagreed with this policy.
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I congratulate my right honourable friend of making those words in our passport allowing Her Majesty's subjects to travel without let and hindrance a reality, and also on being the first minister to come to the dispatch box to defend domestic policy in the United States since Lord North. And can I encourage him to defend our interests as he is doing, and not seek to tell America how to run itself?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. I'm not seeking to defend or indeed to explicate or to rationalise in any way the policy of the presidential executive order. I merely seek to explain how it may affect UK nationals, duals, and what we have done to mitigate the effects of that executive order.
Luciana Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, it was Holocaust Memorial Day, and the Prime Minister told us that our commitment to remembering the Holocaust is, and I quote, about more than words. She said that it is about standing up to prejudice wherever it is found today. Why then on Saturday was the Prime Minister unable to adhere to her own call to action?
The Prime Minister made it very clear that she did not agree with the policy. She did, and I have made it absolutely clear, and I've made it abundantly clear several times now in the course of these proceedings, that I think that the policy is entirely a matter of the United States, but it's my view that it is divisive, discriminatory and wrong.
Bob Neill.
The Foreign Secretary is to be congratulated upon working to protect the rights of British nationals. But will he also consider that he is not telling an ally how to run their own country, to remind them in very calm and very firm terms that our shared relationship is based upon a mutual respect for the rule of law, both national and international, and that persisting in this policy does America no good in that regard at all?
I completely agree with my right honourable friend, and I would just point out that we are more likely as a nation to get a hearing in respect of these vital issues if we treat our partners, our friends and partners, our long-standing friends and partners, with the respect that they deserve.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It seems that fake news has come to the House of Commons with a vengeance, because the Foreign Secretary has just stood up to say that our Prime Minister was one of the first out of the blocks to condemn the words from President Trump. She certainly was not. We've heard it was 38 hours. And her failure was something that shamed this whole country. I'm proud that more people in my constituency of Brighton Pavilion have signed that petition to stop this state visit than any other, because they recognise that our Prime Minister has been involved not in diplomacy but in complicit with tyranny. What does he say?
rubbish.
Well, I say to the right honourable lady that her constituents are, of course, perfectly at liberty to sign the petition. They're perfectly at liberty to express their views. I've expressed my views about this measure, but I also think it'd be a good thing if the visit went ahead, because the relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States is the single most important geopolitical fact of the last 100 years, and we're going to keep that relationship going.
Sir Nicholas Soame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I strongly agree with the Foreign Secretary of the vital importance of this country's alliance with the United States. But would he agree with me that whatever others may do, refugees arriving in this country will be dealt with patience, courtesy and respect?
Secretary.
I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend for his point, and I'm glad also to see that the bust of his grandfather has been rightfully restored to its place in the Oval Office. And of course, I would remind him that it was Winston Churchill who took a very strong view that a country should be able to control its own borders and its own immigration policies.
Mr. David Winnick.
I don't think the Foreign Secretary understands, Mr. Speaker, how so many people in this country feel such contempt for what Trump has done. But can I clarify what he said earlier? If indeed this visit of this wretched man, bigoted man, is going to take place, can we be reassured that under no circumstances will he address Parliament in Westminster Hall? That in itself would be a disgrace.
I'm sure that the mood of the Chamber of the House of Commons will be reflected in all discussions about how the visit is to go ahead, but I think we should bear in mind that he is the elected head of state of our closest and most important ally, and there is absolutely no reason why he should not be accorded a state visit, and every reason why he should.
Sir Edward Lee.
Well, certainly if we got the Queen to have tea with the President of China, I don't see why I shouldn't have tea with the President of America. Has not our security for 70 years depended on this special relationship? And in those terms, and in terms of our prosperity with a future trade deal, was not the visit of the Prime Minister an absolute triumph? And we're all thoroughly proud of her. And isn't the first fruit of this special relationship, the Foreign Secretary has ensured the rights of British citizens?
I must say that I do agree with my right honourable friend about the Prime Minister's visit. I do think it was a very great success, and they evidently kindled an important relationship, and the parallels that were drawn extensively in the US commentariat between Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, between our Prime Minister and the new American President, were, I think, very apposite, and we can look forward to a new era of security and stability working together with the US.
Mike Gapes.
Mr. Speaker, the British Embassy in the United States has a very important page on a website where it shows the lists of presidential visits to the United Kingdom. Can the Foreign Secretary confirm that George W. Bush was president for more than 2 years before he made a state visit, that Barack Obama was president for more than 2 years, and that many previous presidents didn't have state visits at all, although they did visit this country in their duties? Why on earth has Teresa the Appeaser got him here within a few months?
The Honourable Gentleman will have heard the response to what he said, but my immediate reaction is that the matter, I didn't require any assistance, the matter is one of taste rather than of order, and I certainly don't need any help from the Honourable Gentleman, who wouldn't have the foggiest idea where to start. The Foreign Secretary.
Well, then, Mr. Speaker, may I say, with your guidance, therefore, that I do find it distasteful to make comparisons between the elected leader of a great democracy, the elected leader of a great democracy, and 1930s tyrants. I really have to say, I think it is inappropriate. As for the protocol. As for the exact protocol, Mr. Speaker, of when the visit should take place, that is something about which obviously the honourable gentleman cares very deeply. I can't give him any guidance about that. That is a protocol matter.
Keith Simpson.
Can I offer the Foreign Secretary my commiserations at being sent out to bat on a very sticky wicket? Would he perhaps tell the House that when he intervened in Washington, was it through the State Department or the President's son-in-law?
Foreign Secretary.
I'm grateful to my honourable for that ingenious question, but I'm sure that the House will appreciate that we have very good relations at all levels now with the US government. My right honourable friend, the Home Secretary herself, has had an excellent conversation today with General Kelly of the Homeland Security Department, confirming the very important exemptions that we've achieved for UK nationals and for dual nationals.
Tom Brake.
Mr. Speaker, the Foreign Secretary doesn't like outrage, so does he understand the dismay felt by millions of Britons at the Prime Minister's failure to condemn immediately and unequivocally Trump's Muslim ban, and does he acknowledge that this ban may have increased the risk to British citizens in the 7 countries affected by the ban?
Mr. Speaker, I think I'm simply going to have to repeat what I've already said about 15 times this afternoon about my own views on this policy, which I think...
Well, to avoid repetition, let's just pull away there. The Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson facing questions from MPs over the government's response to the US travel ban imposed by Donald Trump. Mr. Johnson telling the Commons that British travellers would not be affected by the restrictions.
OK, we're going to show you some pictures just in from Dublin. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, has arrived there for a meeting with Enda Kenny on Brexit.